Live stream audio check.
Bell. Fine. All right. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is now 6 o'clock. Welcome to the City of Colchester Town Hall. Great to see members of the public, the leader, the chief executive, various people in the room. Folks watching at home, good evening, welcome. There are no practice evacuations or intended alarms tonight, but if we do hear anything like that, then please make your way downstairs via the main stairs in an orderly fashion, or use the side stairs and then rendezvous in the rear of the town hall in the car park, please. This meeting is being streamed live over the internet and it's being recorded so that we can allow our grandchildren to watch it in the future. Can all speakers make sure you use your microphone? The red light indicates it's on, and if you have a loud voice like me, then probably don't get too close to the microphone because they tend to pop. Discreet use of mobile phones and technology is okay, but if anything noisy happens or any embarrassing ringtones go off, then you'll be fined, and that money will go to the mayor's charity. Toilets are available on this floor, and we will probably have a break at 7:30, but subject to where we are in events, I may break a little early, may break a little late, but obviously stick your hand up if you do need a comfort break, and I'll do my best to make sure we get there. My name is Darius Laws. I'm the chairman of tonight's meeting. I'm also a councillor for Rural North Ward. Let's have some introductions to who's around the table, please. Starting on the left there, please.
Good evening. Councillor Simon Appleton, Highwoods Ward.
Councillor Vanessa Moffat, Mile End Ward.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Dave Harris, substituting for Councillor Lee Scordis.
Councillor Jocelyn Law for Highwoods Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Thomas Rowe, Rural North Ward.
Dennis Willits, Lexton and Breeswick Ward.
Mel Rundle, Head of Sustainability, substituting for the Head of Public Protection.
Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Natalie Summers, Portfolio Holder for Communities Heritage, Public Protection, and also Ward Councillor for St Anne's St John's.
Graham Stelly, I look after Neighbourhood Watch in Colchester.
Sam Goodman, Community Safety Officer for Colchester City Council.
Michelle Sparks, the brand new District Commander for Essex Police.
Hi, Bev Jones, I'm the CEO of Next Chapter.
Vincent Jeeves, Manager of Colchester Business Improvement District.
Thank you, everyone. There are a couple of notable absences tonight. Apologies were received, and that's all understandable and will be noted formally. Thank you for that, Mr. Clark, for letting me know. Right, Urgent items, item 3. I'm unaware of any urgent items. Declarations of interest. I see no indications. That's fantastic. We will move on to looking at the minutes of the previous meeting, which happened in September. I thought they were an excellent set of minutes, Mr. Clark. I'm only saddened that Alderman Higgins didn't get her desire to see bicycle theft come down to 0, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight. But it was a good set of minutes. Is everyone happy with those minutes? I am. I propose that they are an accurate record of what happened. We have agreement. That's consensus, if not unanimous. Thank you. Okay. It is probably worth pointing out that we have a number of external partners and friends here tonight. I apologise in advance if I don't address you by your correct pronoun. I'll do my best. Perhaps first names might be easier. I certainly won't be offended by whatever you call me, and no offence will be intended on my part to anyone who I may get the pronoun wrong. We do have a very special guest here tonight. I just want to acknowledge Graham Stelly for being here, because we're all here because we have to be here. You've actually volunteered to avoid the sunset in Great Hawksley over Rural North Ward with a gin and tonic and be here. So thank you so much for coming. And I know that you've got a presentation to guide us through, but I've got a treat for you, because I've got someone that wants to have a conversation with you. And we're going to, Mr. Clark, myself, and Mel here, we're going to depart, and we're going to invite a guest speaker to come up and just say a few words on the work that you've been doing with Neighbourhood Watch over the years. So at this point, I'm going to step out. We will need to keep microphones off for the benefit of the recording and for folks watching at home. But I'm going to invite the Mayor of Colchester to step forward, please, along with the High Sheriff of Essex, and you will now be taking over the meeting, and it's in your gift how long you wish to have your say. I should point out that there were no actual other have your says tonight, were there, Mr. Clark? No. Then I'm doing okay so far, and with that I depart.
Is useful, thank you. Shall I start again? Good evening, High Sheriff, councillors, officers, and most importantly, Graham. I was told this was going to be a surprise, and I did ask if I could burst out of a cake, but they said no. But anyway, I'm delighted to be here this evening and have the honour of presenting this civic award. This award is given in recognition to those who have been actively involved in community development, civic engagement and public service. In short, this award recognises individuals who enhance the well-being of our city. So let me tell you a little bit about Graham's contributions to the wider community. He has over 15 years of community service in Great Hawksley, organising major local events such as the Queen's Jubilee celebrations and the launch of Great Hawksley Village Hall. He is also the Secretary of Aldercar Ward Neighbourhood Watch, ensuring community engagement is strong and that residents are well informed regarding crime trends and crime prevention advice. I think it would be fair to say Graham's never bored. Through his hard work, Graham has had a lasting impact on Colchester and Great Hawksley, strengthening community ties through direct engagement with residents and leaders, running crime prevention awareness campaigns, fundraising and mobilising volunteers. Graham has helped make Colchester safer, more resilient and well connected. I'm unsure if you are aware that Graham has had a career which reflects leadership, innovation and public service. He has been a trainer for councils, police and military organisations. He has designed an award-winning computer science course with IBM and Portsmouth University and has been involved in over 50 international projects, including work in Australia, the Far East, Dubai and Bahrain. That is some track record, and it shows a legacy of service and excellence. As Mayor, I think it is incredibly important to recognise and thank those who exemplify civic pride and leadership. And I take great pleasure in presenting the mayoral certificate for Graham's exceptional contribution and lasting mark on our community. His vision, leadership and dedication have helped build a safer, stronger Colchester, and for that, the City of Colchester thanks him. Thank you, Graham.
Well, that's wonderful.
Mike, then I can hear you.
I don't know how I'm going to do my presentation now. I'm not usually lost for words, but this was an absolute total surprise. I think I know who might be to blame for some of the information that was shared. Yeah, I've had a good career, and when my wife and I moved to Colchester, I was starting to feel the need to have another interest, and well, I just kind of got stuck in, really. And I'm just as enthused about what Neighbourhood Watch can achieve today as I was, 12, 14 years ago. And like all of us, I guess we just try to do our best. But thank you so much. This is amazing. Amazing.
I think the High Sheriff has a few words for you as well.
If I may just take the microphone briefly. I'm here in my capacity as the representative for the Monarch for Law and Order in Essex. And I'm coming towards the end of my tenure as High Sheriff. We have just a year of representing the King. And in my travels around the county, I've become aware that Essex is a marvellous place. It's chock full of good people, doing fine work, helping and building communities. And it's within my gift, you're going to need a bigger wall, sir, to give you the High Sheriff's Award, recognising your commitment to community safety, for which we're all very grateful.
I'll sit down before I fall down.
I was going to say, it's just as well I didn't burst out the cake.
Thank you all.
I think what we're going to do now, sorry for grabbing the mic, Madam Mayor, is invite Graham to join yourself in the parlour here, where you can continue your conversations. And then when you've had your conversations in here, whatever moment you like, because we will be here for quite a while, if Graham would like to then rejoin us, and then we look forward to having his presentation at that point, if that works for everyone. So I think you might get your gin and tonic now, Graham, I don't know. But if you'd like to come in here, and we'll give the hall keeping staff a few moments just to resettle and probably close these doors so that you can have your conversations in private and that we can continue with the formalities of our meeting. All right? And congratulations to a Royal North Ward resident as well from your councillor. Shall we kill mics? We'll kill mics for Okay, good evening, welcome back everyone. That was an unusual start to a formal meeting in here, but a really, really pleasant one. And we will be inviting Graham back later for his presentation. Right, where are we? We need to get on with scrutinising the work of the Safer Colchester Partnership. It's worth pointing out that, as I mentioned to earlier, we have to be here. This is an annual statutory function. The administrative aspects and reporting line is such that the Safer Partnership sits within the city as an authority at the moment. That's how it is. And it very much is a partnership with lots of organisations involved. We've had a report prepared for us tonight, and we've had 4 objectives described for the year 25 to 26 going forward that we are to look at and that we are to challenge or simply say congratulations, crack on. I don't know. It's not a premeditated meeting. We'll find out. But before that, I probably need to allow the portfolio holder, Councillor Natalie Somers, to introduce the item, and then we'll then take a presentation before we get into the discussions. Am I okay at the moment, Mr. Clark? Slightly thrown by things earlier, but I think we're okay. All right, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening, those of us that have to be here and those of us that have volunteered. We're here to look at the strategic priorities for the Colchester Community Safety Partnership for the forthcoming year. So I think it was the meetings in 23-24, it was decided that these should be reviewed in good time by the Crime and Disorder Committee. So the Community Safety Partnership convened, I think it was in November, to look at the priorities coming for the forthcoming year, looking at the data, seeing where the priorities lie, and making decisions on those. And that is what we're here to review. So I'd like to thank them for all their hard work in putting this report together, and obviously all the work they've done over the past year and previous years in making Colchester a safer place for residents and everybody else to live. So thank you very much, and over to Samantha.
Just before I bring Samantha in, it's just worth pointing out, isn't it, that in previous discussions, we might need to close that door in the end. In previous discussions, we talked about some of the language around these priorities. It's also relevant to the council in general, because when you talk about having strategic priorities and you see a list numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, people can get quite sensitive that there is a hierarchy there, and there is not. There is not a hierarchy, as I understand it, with the council's strategic priorities, and there is not with the partnership's priorities. So I think the useful language that I've been hearing to date has been around, a set of strategic areas of focus, yes, priorities, but it's great that they're not even numbered. And I'm sure tonight we might accidentally call it number 3, but we don't mean it. There's no hierarchy here. I just want to make that clear for the record. But over to you, Samantha, to guide us through what's going on.
I have pulled together a few slides just to kind of focus on pulling out some of the main parts from the reports that have been prepared. So the slides are just coming up now. I'm presenting on behalf of the Community Safety Partnership and the Community Safety team at the council, because Paul Donachie isn't here today. However, I will just do my best to focus on what we need to achieve. So, Irene, could you go to the 3rd slide, please? So, as we say, the purpose of today is to review the Strategic Assessment of Crime report, consider the data that we used to inform the focus for the coming year, and to agree the 4 areas that we have pulled together for you. Irene? Oh, thank you. So the Strategic Assessment of Crime is something that we have a statutory duty to prepare, and it's something that we do collectively based on data that is presented to us. So the Strategic Assessment of Crime was circulated with the papers. It's a very lengthy document, very statistical based, lots of data in there around the crime figures relating to all the various crimes, antisocial behaviour, hate crime, domestic abuse, etc. And that also breaks the crime rates down into the relative to the population. So I've pulled out a key point there. that the crime rate per 1,000 people is slightly higher than Essex overall, but we are seeing a bigger reduction in crime compared to the county figures. So, and those comparisons are throughout that report. And we also consider feedback from public perception. So from the Community Safety Survey, that is an Essex-wide survey. So we get residents' thoughts about their perception of crime. And we also take into account some of the public perception surveys that the police conduct. And all of that comes together when we're looking at that data. So the next stage was to complete the risk matrix, which I know in the past we've looked at, because it can be a huge document when you try to print that off, but I believe you should all have copies of that. Hopefully that makes things a bit easier. But that matrix is partly populated by Essex, and we then, as a community safety partnership, are required to complete 2 columns on that based on our local knowledge as professionals, as working with residents and the general community. And that's what we've done when we've come to score and rank those crime types. From there, we have this ranking where we can see what ranks highest based on collectively on all of those various areas. And that's when we pull together the top ranking crimes and look to see if that is something we can then build into our coming areas of focus for the coming year. So we did reflect on last year at this stage in the process. We had a wide variety of partners there, and we looked at what worked well last year, what was achieved. And here is just a very high snapshot of some of the projects that came into each of the 4 areas that we were looking at last year and working collectively to tackle. So as we can see, I'm not going to read it all through, but they're around domestic abuse. There was a number of projects around the Together We Can project, working with Next Chapter, and lots of awareness raising and training. We looked at the violence against women and girls agenda and looked at some of the projects that have been operating to tackle that. We looked at the protecting the vulnerable and some of the early intervention work that had been taking place with some of our young people who to divert them away from crime, and also empowering people to build resilient communities. Some of the outreach work that had been taking place and the development of the new Community Safety Partnership website, for example, and we looked at what collectively had been achieved there. As the Chair has said, we then looked at what we needed to achieve for the coming year. And the next slide, please, Owen. We tried to present it as an infographic rather than, taking on board the feedback from last time, a list 1 to 4, and this is a snapshot of the 4 areas. From there, we then broke them down into objectives, so we could clearly, as a partnership, see where each partner could contribute to this overall objective. So, for example, within domestic abuse, I've listed here what those 6 objectives under that title are. So there's a piece around awareness and education, early intervention, supporting victims, perpetrator accountability, professional training, and data sharing. So again, that is to give some clarity and be able to then measure at the end of the year in a clearer way how we've achieved against those. Just moving on. So the next one to tackle was looking at safeguarding individuals vulnerable to violence and exploitation. So again, very much around some of the same areas, looking at the awareness and education around high harm crimes, bearing in mind that a lot of these are hidden and not easy to identify, early intervention work, community action, so what can we do on a community basis, victim support, perpetrator action and collaboration. Addressing antisocial behaviour, neighbourhood crimes and their root causes was our next one. So again, the wording has changed significantly on this one, but some of the themes are similar, but we wanted again to give that clarity. So there's areas around identify and target hotspots, community education, empower communities, prevent and mitigate antisocial behaviour, engage with the young people, and collaborate for sustainable solutions. So it all sounds very wordy, but again, the words that we've pulled together there are to be able to help us to measure and see where we're going with that. And the final area is around promoting safety, inclusivity, and social, economic, and environmental well-being for all of Colchester's community. So this is where we want to hear from a wider range of voices. So those areas that those community groups that we want to hear from their perspective that we're not already linked in with, to actively work with those. Hate crime has been highlighted there. Awareness, particularly around suicide, fraud prevention and personal safety has been pulled out as an objective. Public safety, safer roads, that's a new one for our objectives. So we'll be doing some work and looking at partnerships to achieve that. And effective signposting. So they are the areas that we're obviously going to look at and welcome your feedback and any questions on today.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we'll look at them in turn, but I'll just kick things off, Chairman's prerogative, and just ask the list of those that were consulted as part of these priorities. I don't know if that's an exhaustive list, and I recognise, I think most of those organisations, I understand what they're about, but I was just thinking, for example, why would we not have consulted with an age concern type of charity? Because elderly people are often the victims of fraud, particularly cyber fraud statistically. I don't see anything particularly neurodiverse there. Autism Anglia was a charity. I don't know what they do day to day very well, but they worked in that field. And then I note, for example, we've consulted with the Colchester Chinese Association, but on the most basic metric, they've got half the amount of followers on their Facebook page compared to the Colchester Filipino Association, and yet we've not gone to the Filipino. So I'm not criticising, I just wonder if there is scope, if we've got a long list, to consider extending it, because it struck me that there's some folks there that I'd have expected to be there. I don't know if you've got an insight on that one.
That's certainly feedback we can take on board. I think we were just really eager to share those draft objectives with as many people as possible. So we did it through our community safety partners and their networks first off. So that is a wide range of partners, including sort of adult social care. And we then reached out to some of our colleagues in community and partnerships team of the council and wanted to link in with some of their sort of representatives and the organisations that they were working with. So that kind of list came from those from those links.
Okay.
And also through the Modern Slavery Partnership, some of the partners that work on that partnership. So certainly, it isn't an exhaustive list, but we can take on board that feedback and try and share with a wider group next time.
Okay, all right, thank you. Right, councillors, I'm looking for your hands. I see Simon, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. Very useful and informative. Yeah, the infographic that you referred to, the diagram showing the 4 key priorities for this year, and I think that was paragraph 5.22, compared that to 5.19, which showed the objectives or priorities for last year, and they look like they're a bit higher level, a bit more generic, broader in nature. Is that just a perception, a misconception on my part, or is that deliberate?
The infographic, yes, is
Right.
kind of trying to summarise what then comes from that. So yeah, it is capturing the essence of the four key areas.
Okay, and the details beneath that, thank you.
Great. I saw Councillor Willits.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to take up the point that you, the throwaway point that you just made about the representation, which I feel is probably worth looking at in greater detail. It's probably a truism that if you consult, the result of that consultation will really be determined by who it is you choose to consult and what are their issues. I represent a ward which stretches all the way from Lexden, the heart of the city, into right up to the Great Tay boundary, where the crimes of interest are. Goes sheep stealing and so on. Not much interest to the people of Lexden, but it's interesting to see how the perceptions differ according to the part of the ward that I look at. And my feeling about a lot of what we're doing here, and particularly when you look at the people who are being consulted in 523, is that this exercise is urban-centric. Although there are paragraphs in the report on rural, it is clearly urban-centric. It's consulting some very important minority groups who are found in the city centre, and several other groups who are city centre centric, such as Lion Walk Shopping Centre and Culver Square Shopping Centre. I mean, notably absent is anyone representing the business interests from Tollgate. And you'll recall Tollgate now has the Marks and Spencers, one of the best performing Marks and Spencers in East Anglia. It has a Sainsbury's, which has the country record for taking over £1.1 million in a day, something never achieved in the town centre. When you tot up the amount of retail space at Tollgate, it warrants equal placing, if not greater placing, than the bid. And if the bid have a representative here, they should probably do. I would also argue that if you look at the Northern Gateway, you're now seeing a commercial centre who experience a degree of crime, just as everyone does, who also should be represented if we want to see a fair share of business representation for both the partnership or the associates of the partnership, and also those people who are consulted as a matter of routine on any partnership consultations. The next issue, of course, is the matter of parish councils. The parish councils, say typically West Burgold Parish Council in my area, has a population which far exceeds many of the people and many of the organisations who are on this list. Yet they, as an important parish council, just as Mylands Parish Council and Stanway Parish Council, represent the interests of many people who are experiencing crime of one sort or another, but they are not on this list. So I would suggest to the committee that it is now time, now we've got the process in the risk and the other processes in order, and they seem to be working extremely well this time round. The analysis of crime and the analysis of risk is very clearly, logically set out. The one failing of this system is the narrowness of its purview and people being consulted, in that they are mainly city centre organisations. And I would respectfully suggest, Chairman, that one of our action points coming out of this meeting is to extend the franchise of the partnership to cover the whole of the city. Now, you may well say that's a futile exercise as the city is about to be abolished, but nevertheless, The geography remains exactly the same. And I think it would strengthen the role and the understanding and the correct analysis of crime, and perhaps it may be different, it may be exactly the same perception of where crime exists and what should be done about it, if it was quite obvious to everyone that the partnership includes the whole of the city and is not just the city centre organisations. And I welcome the view of colleagues on this, and I'd be mindful later on to suggest a recommendation, if there is support, that we should see greater participation in the work of the partnership and in those who are consulted on the matter of crime priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Willits. Useful contribution. Samantha, do you want to come back on that one? I mean, obviously, it will be up to the panel to consider what I think is already quite a very clear recommendation, but do you want to just give an initial response to that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely can take on that feedback. We are linked in with the Town and Parish Council Clerks Forum, for example. That is something we could share through that network when we come to this stage next year. Or at the stage when we were sharing with the other groups. So I'm more than happy to take that forward to the chair of the CESP for approval and just make sure that they're happy with that and how best to do that. And I take on board, the fact that the business element, we have consulted, this time with a wider group, but there is still scope to extend that as the city, on a wider basis. So I take it on board, and it's something we can look at. Yes.
Okay, I'm not hearing any resistance to include anyone who wants to contribute to shaping this, which is good. The more the merrier, frankly. Okay, I saw another hand. Was it Councillor Harris? Yes. Go for it.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. Yes, I wanted to salute the report. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there, and I read it. I'm only a usurper here, so I apologise for I'm not Councillor Lee Scorders, who normally is on this panel, but I've read this with intent, and for me, it was saddened to see some of the things that are coming to the top of the pile, and I think you're well used to doing these sort of work programmes, domestic violence. The other things that are listed there, assault with injury, etc. All those so things obviously come to the top. And I just wonder whether there's any knowledge in making sort of the acorns for the oak trees that will come in a few years' time to work with Essex Child and Family Wellbeing Centres, who have immense professional work going on in their centres in St Anne's and in Grinstead and in Beerchurch and around Colchester. The professionals in there pick up the pieces when things go wrong in domestic communities. No matter how strong a community is, it's wrong to accept and allow as much as we're able that sort of stuff to go on. And I just wonder whether the acorns I'm talking about is the schools, the academies, the places around Colchester where young people start their lives off well and start to learn how to be good citizens, etc. And I wonder whether there's any way, there may not be, but I'm hoping that we can plug into the Essex Child and Family Wellbeing Hubs and the schools, whether they're academies or whether they're council-led schools. I think there's a lot to be gained from including those people in the solution, as well as the suggestions of consulting for the future, because we should not put up with that, should we, in this day and age in our communities. We want to make so that my great-great-grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren live in a better world than we have today, and that acorn needs to be planted now, and I think you're doing that. Just I need to be assured that we can think about how we're going to do that and water the acorn to make sure it grows and flourishes. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Early intervention and the work with the young people that you've mentioned is, I think you'll see, is in each of the 4 areas that we've listed. So we'll be looking at interventions, projects, partners that we can work with to put together a plan for that. We have some ideas already, but we are of course always open to people coming looking to us for, you know, to feed in ideas and how we can achieve that. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, well, you know, this is what the point of the meeting is about. We have to have difficult conversations, and it's difficult reading, isn't it, to see, and, you know, the report highlights it, literally, that other sexual offences and rape statistics for Colchester are not in a good place. And I just wondered if there was any sort of obvious reason why that might be. And in the context of Acorns, sometimes we don't see the results until a while down the line, but those numbers are worryingly high. Perhaps there's a reason for it. I don't know, but it's worrying. Maybe Samantha, you need a break. I don't know. Do the police have a view on why this is? Which, by the way, probably does inform, very rightly so, why one of the priorities is around this area, if I may say. But I just wonder why.
Good evening, everybody. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, I haven't got a response for you for that particular uplift in relation to those rape and other sexual offences. You'll see in the report that the other sexual offences are up by 6.1%, but the rape was down by 60 offences, which is a reduction of 17.9%. If you're looking a bit more locally, and up until January of this year, we have seen those continued improvements in relation to rape, and over that 12-month period, is a further 4.4% reduction. But again, as you would have noted, it is an increase in other sexual offences. I will need to go away and look into those details to understand a little bit more about what that looks like, and I'm happy to report back to the meeting at a later stage, if that's okay.
Thank you, because of course, you know, this authority prides itself on being a purple flag city. We are a safe, enjoyable night out, and we have an amazing partnership working across all the licensed premises. And, you know, we run campaigns around spiking, around, you know, we all know about Ask Angela, hopefully, when you're out and about. If you're feeling uncomfortable, you can go to... So we do all that good stuff, and I just wondered, you know, why that was on the up on the other sexual offences. So it might be useful to understand when you can, if there's anything more we can do.
Absolutely, I'm more than happy to report that. But what I would say is that I'm actually quite happy in some respects to see some of those figures going up, because it means there's greater confidence in policing in order to be able to report that. And that's something which I think we need to be targeting going forward. There is lots of attrition rates within the criminal justice system where people are withdrawing from that process, and we need to make sure that people have got confidence to be able to come forward to report. So the statistic, whilst we have got that upwards trend, it may actually be a positive image that we need to have a look at. I just need to understand a little bit more about that detail behind it so I can report back to you with some confidence.
Thank you. We talked, I think I heard someone mention driving offences, which is... I'm interested from a police point of view. I mean, maybe the answer is quite simply that cars are faster. But us folks representing the rural communities know just how real an issue it is for people that live on what are straight roads in particular, in villages where cars will occasionally fly through if they don't know the area. And there's lots of those, you know, activated signs like it's never been before. And that's a good thing, but I just wondered why are we all driving faster in this country right now? It's not just an Essex problem, is it?
No, it's definitely not. And then, unfortunately, if you look at some of the statistics that we've got, particularly over the last 12 months, you'll see that we have seen that increase in death and serious injury, and I think that's something that we need to be really cognizant of, a massive increase, and actually those figures don't increase the very tragic 4 fatalities that we had at the start of February as well. I think we need to recognise that there are some particular issues in relation to that. You're absolutely right. Why are we driving faster? I think it's because they're much around the powerful, more vehicles, they're much easier to drive. There are some youth issues that are in relation to that. One of those things that we'll be looking at as policing to do is to get into the universities and do some preventative work with them in order to be able to teach people to respect the laws of the law much more closely.
Chair, if you don't mind me jumping in on that point, I think there were some reports in the paper just recently, and a friend of mine had a very similar experience where they met someone travelling the wrong way around a roundabout. There does seem to be a lot of driving offences where people seemingly don't have a driving licence. what sort of checks do the police do to make sure that people are fully insured and fully, up to speed on what they need to be with driving licences, etc.?
When drivers come to the attention of police officers, and if they're involved in a stop, they will automatically do a check on the police national computer for driving licence, insurance and those sorts of things. So they need to come to our attention in the first instance before we are more likely to be able to check on those things. There's no real mechanism for us to be able to go out and check all the thousands and thousands of drivers in the county in order to be able to check that they are driving with licences and insurance. So we need to check that they would come to the police attention in the first instance before we would be able to do those checks in relation to those individuals.
Even with the cameras on the A12, for example, picking up pretty much everybody's, you've got the you've got the number plates, therefore you know if that car is insured or, are you looking at things along the lines of, AI, for example, to try to pick that stuff up, automated systems? I understand no one's going to sit there and check every single number plate. It's completely impossible. But there are systems that are out there now that we can sort of, plug into effectively, that we could probably get to automate that type of thing. That might help, that might create extra stuff, but it's worth looking into.
Absolutely, and we're going to encourage innovation in that space, particularly with the AI spice, and there's an awful lot that's going on with Essex Police in order to develop what AI looks like and how we can use that to enforce and give us better information. You're absolutely right, there's ANPR, automatic number plate recognition systems on every single cameras that we've got that enable us to be able to identify those things. But you're right, it is an AI, it's development, it's innovation, and that is probably something that we can look at, but that is not an isolation, that's just not a policing issue either as well. That comes down to the council and the rest of the partnership in order to understand how we get that information, how we process it in a lawful and legal way as well.
Thank you very much.
Simon.
Thank you, Chair. You've mentioned in that table Essex Police crime data for last year, 2 of the main outliers already for Colchester. And the third one, probably the biggest outlier in the whole table, is bicycle theft. Massive outlier. And I just wondered if there are any hot spots that are sort of contributing to that big number. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I don't have that information to hand, and I do apologise for that. But what I can say is, when looking at the rolling data to January, which is the most up-to-date stat that I have got, actually there were 81 less offences over the course of the previous 12 rolling months, which is a decrease of 20.8%. So I will go back and have a look at the information that's detailed within the report to understand actually if we had a fluctuation that was probably earlier than the data that I've got in front of me. But what I can say is that does prove to be an improving picture.
Councillor Willetts.
Yeah, Chairman, can I ask our Chief of Police why there is such a huge difference between the actual crimes which are happening and the perception of the public as to how dangerous the place is, because it seems worrying that there, even after all the work and all the information being provided, there is still this gulf. If one looks at the report, we see that 81% of the respondents considered that fraud and scams were the most important matter, and then in 23 they put second place burglary and the third place theft, whereas last year it was fraud first, physical assault second, and burglary third. But it seems an amazing percentage that of the people asked, 81% put fraud and scams above some of the more serious crimes which are actually happening. And is it that this is just a perception, or is it that we know that there are call centres which are plaguing myself and other sort of elderly people in the city with an amazing array of scams, which hopefully most of us don't fall for. But is it that just that the scams are not getting through and working, so thankfully, so it is just a perception of crime, and the actual crimes that are happening are in a different category. I mean, do you have a sort of seasoned view on why there is this gulf between perception and actuality?
Absolutely. I think what it's really important for us to recognise is that, and it's noted in your report around public perception, is that actually 81% of our community think that Essex Police is doing a good or excellent job, and I think that's something that we do really need to recognise, and that's one of the highest in the county. But you're absolutely right, there is a perception around crime, a fear of crime that we've talked about for a long period of time within policing. One of those things, particularly around fraud. Fraud is one of the biggest crimes that we've got nationally across the piece. That doesn't have the same sort of harm that we might see and some of those other crimes that we're talking about here today. I think one of those reasons that is because of social media and because of those prevalence of the call centres that you are referring to, and we are much more open and accessible as a community, as a society, with access to mobile phones and things like that. So I think actually one of the really important things that we need to do, which is one of the things that we will be focusing on, is how around that education piece and looking at vulnerability particularly. So I think there is a real opportunity for us to be able to get in there and ensure that the perception of crime is tackled as well as actual crime.
So your recommendation is that we should not be tempted into overthrowing our existing 4 priority areas and replacing it with fraud and scams, although I'm sure that there are quite a lot of people who would like to see just a little more policing effort going into some of these fraud and scams which sort of plague us.
I'm just going to refer to Sam because she has got slightly more information in that particularly.
We acknowledge that fraud and scams was high up there with the perception, and that's why we've specifically named it in one of those objectives when we come to the, underneath the 4 key areas, we've specifically highlighted fraud as something that we feel the Community Safety Partnership can support in terms of awareness raising. So we feel that is something that we can actively do something around.
It is, you're right, it is there for prevention under promoting safety, inclusivity, social, economic and environmental wellbeing for all cultures. Councillor Rowe and then Councillor Law.
Chair, just on that point around fraud, I understand everything that's been said, but I suppose from a perspective of policing it, how difficult is it to police those fraudulent crimes? Because obviously, especially if we're talking about social media, you can theoretically be frauded by someone over the other side of the world, and it's completely outside of the policing jurisdiction. So I think from that perspective, we're right to focus on prevention rather than trying to police it, so to speak, because it seems to me that it's not an easy thing to police, but it doesn't mean you should sort of give up on it. But at the same time, I can't see what you can do without jurisdiction outside of
it's a
Colchester.
national matter.
It's an international matter,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, is that a fair point?
You're absolutely right, Chair. It's a national problem, it's an international problem. There are some national strategies that are run by the MPCC that has those connections in with the international banks, the local banks, in order to put some of that responsibility on them to put prevention. And as you all may well have been aware, and unfortunately we've all probably been victims to some elements of those fraud, that actually the banks are taking on a huge amount of responsibility to ensure that we are all safeguarded in that. There's probably more still to be done, but you're absolutely right, it's a national strategy rather than a local one. The prevention piece locally is around education to ensure that people don't fall victim of it in the first instance.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Law.
I guess this might be something perhaps Sam can pick up. Again, I was sort of interested in terms of with the fraud because I work in the advice sector supporting people in the 65 plus age group, and sort of some of the people that we come across may be digitally excluded or not confident online and can be very vulnerable. I know we're lucky to have like the digital access team that sort of work from Colchester City Council, and wonder how they're able to support particularly the more vulnerable people that aren't so confident online. And it's not just banking, where it can be things like romance, scams and fraud, and that can really have a huge impact on people's well-being in terms of trust as well, and confidence using services online.
I can just take on board everything that you're saying. It is something that, we can look at across all of those sort of areas, those vulnerable groups, and come up with some, activity for the specific areas.
Okay. Just to give us a little time check of where we're at. So we do need to hear a report that Graham has kindly prepared for us tonight, and that may well inform some of our decisions tonight. So we will do that hopefully before we break. I'm quite happy to keep going though, because there's lots of questions. Simon, again.
Thank you, Chair. Shoplifting are probably not one of the most serious crimes here, but just one that is a bit of a bugbear for me, and is obviously growing. It's on the increase nationally. Quite outrageous, and blatant, and I've got 4 sons. My 3rd son was a supervisor or managing a co-op store, and was actually told just to almost ignore it, because if you challenge it, you could, get in trouble. And I just wondered what the plans are here to tackle it. In fact, I was in Tesco's, what's it called? The small Tesco's over the road, and I saw, I think, community police actually in the store on Sunday. So there's obviously stuff that's being done. Thank you.
Vincent, you've obviously got a lot of experience in this, and you've been in this building before, to remind us just how serious this is. And yes, you're right, Simon, to point out that it's perhaps not as serious as a sexual offence, but it's very serious if you're a small business, and if your takings are taking £100 hit a day on people walking in, blatantly getting away with it. What's going on, Vincent, in this area? Are we in a better place now, would you say?
I think we're in a better place where we can start communicating with the community policing team. I think what we need to do now is be willing to share the information across the platforms. We've got Colchester Business Against Crime, which is a kind of the lead really from us, and the support from the bid to back that. And it's giving people the courage to report. One of the biggest things that Commander Cox said to me, please report. So it's a case for us to go out and make sure that people are reporting. We've developed something called a reporting pack, which makes it far easier for any national or independent to actually have information ready, so that when the police officers arrive or the PCSO arrives, there is information that they can start an investigation straight away. And that was sort of compiled from Colback, ourselves, the business crime team and the local policing team. So hopefully now that message is going out to the police officers to say, that's the first thing we should be asking for. Have you got the CCTV? Here's a link, and it makes it very, very quick to now report. And for those independents, those nationals, to actually see that work is finally coming up. And it's a sharing element as well, and more so recently in the press we saw the 2 individuals, it isn't just £100. After a while it then becomes £20,000. And it's those stories as well that we need to put out to our bid members, as well as our friends of the bid. Please report. Training is important. We spoke about fraud as well. The business crime team from Essex Police have been offering fraud sessions, how to prevent, how to spot people who are vulnerable. Are we checking people that they are putting cash away at the post office, and all these sorts of things. So there's that education piece. Then there's that bit where we can assist the police in who is it we need to keep an eye out. And with those Colback members knowing who these people are, that net suddenly becomes very small.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. All right, something that hit me, and it's probably a question for the police. In the strategic assessment 2024 that was written in December by Samantha, there's a line in here on page 13, which is using census data, so it's no surprise, I'm just stating a fact here. But it talks about basically Colchester's population exploding. Okay, now we all can see that with the housing numbers that is happening. I'm not going to go into a discussion around it, it's just a fact. I just wonder, from a policing point of view, does having lots of new residents, does that pose operational challenges in terms of getting to know communities? And is that something that the authority, like Colchester, that's growing very big, needs to grapple with in a different way to, say, a well-established Mid-Suffolk community, for example?
I think that's a fair comment, and what I would say from a totality of an Essex Police perspective in relation to progress of where we're going, our CPTs, our community policing teams, we will be changing from the 1st of April to a neighbourhood policing team, and there's been investment made from a governmental stance in order to be able to increase what those teams look like, and we'll be getting a number of additional, of a number of 74 additional officers that are coming that are being redistributed within Essex Police, and we'll get a proportion of those that come to Colchester, and those officers will go into our community policing teams, and they will be focused on what are those neighbourhood particular issues. There'll be NPTs from now on, from the 1st of April onwards, there'll be neighbourhood policing teams, and they will be focused on building those relationships with those growing communities that we've got at the moment. The current government is very much alive to what that looks like, and that'll be part of the work once those people start to arrive within Essex Police within less than a month's time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, colleagues around the table, do we have any more questions? Just before Councillor Willetts talks, is everyone here absolutely rock solid happy with these 4 strategic areas of focus?
Yes.
Okay, right, that's good. Bev, you've not said anything tonight, so but that's fine. But did you want to just give me your take on this? I mean, we've been here before, lots of good work done by the organisation you're from. Are you content?
Thank you, yeah, it's been quite nice to just sit back this evening, to be fair. No, I think we've worked really, really hard, and we had some really robust conversations as a partnership looking at setting up these objectives, where we were trying really hard to lift them up and broaden them so that they were able to take into account some of those other perception items, as well as the things that we know are the, you know, the really hard, gnarly bit of the crime that we see. So I'm really comfy. I think that we've struck a really lovely balance between focusing on the things that we really need to, as you said, Councillor Willetts, about the things that are actually happening, that we have the numbers for, and some really quite horrible crimes, but through to recognising how we build a community to deal with some of that perception stuff and the things that are clearly important. So I think the balance feels right. I think the graphic is lovely because it enables us to put them all there in the middle without conferring any kind of hierarchy. So I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Willetts.
Chairman, I was going to ask a question on Prevent, but before I do that, given the issue that was just being discussed, this time last year, we were a little perplexed by the statistics where the support organisations was showing violence against women was going up, but the number of reports to the police was not going up at the same rate. I think it wasn't going down, but it wasn't going up at the same rate. And we certainly had a discussion about that. Could we just ask for an update on the reporting arrangements? Because I'm particularly keen that all crime reports which become known to, you know, us, those who put our arms around the community and try and help them, are reported to the police. And it seemed that there may have been some reports of violence against women which were going into the support organisation, but which were not appearing on on police records, and it was unclear where the decision was being made as to whether where these borderline cases were being decided it was a crime or not a crime. And it was certainly my view that that should be done by the police, not by the support organisation. But I think we had a sort of a mild difference of opinion on that. I just wonder whether it's possible for Bev to say a few words about the extent to which violence against women are always appearing in the police statistics, so that we know the exact extent of the reported problem.
So I'm not sure that we're ever going to get to a position where we agree on this, because I think there is a fundamental difference between, and always will be, the numbers that are reported to us and the numbers that go through to the police. And as we explored last time, regardless of whether something is reported to a police, it's still a crime. The decision-making doesn't sit with the support organisation. The decision-making sits with the individual who has experienced the crime. We as a support organisation do everything that we possibly can to support that person in their decision-making. We work really closely with our colleagues in the police, because what we want to see are the perpetrators of the crime held to account. We want to see them dealt with either through perpetrator work, so they change their behaviour, or dealt with through a criminal justice, so that they no longer can affect either the person that we're supporting or anybody else. That said, we know that their criminal justice process can be really, really hard on a victim. Taking things through the court, there's quite a low percentage of cases that actually find themselves in court, and then the delays. We are dealing with, really quite horrific cases at the moment that are 18 months away from going to court. It's really, really difficult to support somebody to maintain their support of a criminal justice process. That leaves them 18 months hanging in the balance, where they can't move on with the rest of their lives. They can't recover because they're forever being re-traumatised by needing to hold on to what happened to them, to continue to look over their shoulder because they know that this action is waiting to happen. So I guess I can't give you any reassurances that every single number that sits with us will be reflected in police numbers, because that isn't within our gift to do that. We work with people to empower them, but we don't have the right to report on their behalf. We have to work with them for them to make a report, and that has to be their choice, because they have to make the decision that is right for them to be able to move on with their life. And I guess you have to trust us that we work with each other, and that those that really, really need to go to the police, we will work together. We have MARAC referrals which override where somebody is at imminent risk of harm or death. Then we have processes that override that and override consent. But where things are still a crime, but somebody isn't at imminent risk of serious harm or death, then it has to sit with them. We're all about empowerment. The whole process of domestic abuse takes away somebody's power to make their own decision, and we can't be part of that. We have to give the power back to them to make the choice. So I'm imploring you to trust us that we work together as much as we possibly can, but there is always going to be a difference in those numbers, and that's right.
It's good to have that reassurance, Chairman. If I might ask the question that I was going to ask before Bev spoke, there is an obligation on this authority, as there is on every other public authority, school and so on, a legal duty to identify people who may turn to extremism under the prevent process. Someone was kind enough to put a copy of William Shawshaw's report on prevent in my pigeonhole, so I assumed that was a prompt for me to ask a question on it. There are statutory duties to report anyone we feel is showing extremism, and that applies to the council and all our officers in the course of their work. I guess most of it works okay, but of late there have been some fairly spectacular failures of this, of which one was in Essex regarding an Essex MP, and that was in the news today. And the question have is who is actually carrying out the scrutiny of how well the PREVENT system is working. It's not quite clear from the one-year progress report that the Home Secretary has produced as to who it is who actually says is being done well. You know, all elements in the community are taking this responsibility seriously. It's not mentioned in the partnership report that they are ensuring that their role and the role of the local community to cooperate is being done well. So I just wonder who is doing it. Should it be the responsibility of the partnership? Is it the responsibility of the partnership, but they're just not reporting in their annual report for one reason or another, that they are taking a view of how well the PREVENT process is running in Colchester, bearing in mind that we know that there are tensions at times.
It's a fair challenge, and to surmise what Councillor Willits, I think, is saying, with what happened to the tragedy of the murder of Sir David Amess, and also more recently in Southport, the media has described the situation as potentially people falling through gaps, because it's not quite clear if it's a mental health or if it's a terrorism-related thing. So I think that's a very fair challenge from Councillor Willits. I was just filling, but over to you, Sam.
Yeah, PREVENT is on our agenda, absolutely. The strategic assessment report has got an element of some of the data around that. So in Essex, we have the Essex PREVENT Delivery Group, of which the community safety team of the council, we are represented on that group along with the other local authorities in Essex. So I think figures for 23-24, there were 136 PREVENT referrals, 22 were in Colchester, and through that Essex meeting, we find out about any trends, anything that we need to be aware of, and work together through that forum to look at activity that we can be taking forward.
Yes, Chairman, it wasn't the numbers, it's this, and we're a scrutiny panel. Our job, what we call crime and disorder, our job is to make sure that process and procedures are working properly in the interest of the population. So really I was interested in who is actually scrutinising the well-working of PREVENT in Colchester. Is it the partnership? Is it the police who take a look over your shoulder to see that it's been done well? Is it someone in Essex? Is it some unnamed person in London who takes a watchful eye? You know, is it being scrutinised? And if so, you didn't even tell us who it is, but you know, just give us an assurance that it is. And if it's the partnership, I think we'll say.
Yeah, it is through the partnership. We have a strategy for Colchester, and that includes the work that the partnership is doing around training, around awareness raising. So that does come under the Community Safety Partnership banner, if you like. So it is within our remit. And
is there a scrutiny report about how well PREVENT is going? Again, we don't want to see it, you know, just tell us whether there is one. Is a formal report prepared on how well PREVENT is operating in Colchester? You know, don't want to see it, but you know, just want the assurance that someone somewhere is doing it to make sure that, given these catastrophic failures we've seen, not in Colchester, thankfully, but that there is an experienced, watchful eye scrutinising how well it is being done.
So if I could come in on Sam's behalf there, so there is scrutiny around the PREVENT strategy, and that is very much on a national basis, and counter-terrorism policing across the whole of the nation. And we have got particular areas within the Eastern Region. The Eastern Region Specialist Operations Group will be feeding into the counter-resident terrorism hubs which are in the Metropolitan Police, and they will have that scrutiny panel. What you'll find is a lot of that scrutiny and that information isn't available in a public space because of a national security process. So whilst that scrutiny does happen, the majority of that information isn't publicly available because of the impact it may have if that information is shared more widely.
Understood. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. As the the groups that you work with regards to the strategy are mentioned in there. From a prevent perspective, can we don't have to see the report, but can we see who you're working with from a, you know, I mean, like you're working with schools, you're working with particular groups, who are you working with to make sure that that is done properly? Is there a list of that, or I don't think it's in the documentation.
I particularly can't answer in terms of Colchester, but what I will say is that prevent recommendation, and there is the onus on every single education board, everything that the council has, and we've got a duty as public officials in order to be able to feed into that prevent strategy. We've all got that duty, that prevent duty that we need to do. So in fact, if you were to mention any of those public bodies, all of those public bodies have that duty in order to report that prevent strategy.
Yeah, I understand, but I was also talking about the community groups as well. So so I get that the government organisations and the schools, etc., all have a public duty to do it. But in the way that we reach out to other community groups, is there a list of community groups, or do we reach out to particular community groups, or do we not do that? I don't know. I mean, how does it work?
I can't speak for Essex at this moment in time. I don't know if you are able to do that.
Sam, if needs be, if you do have the prevent strategy and it can be circulated to committee, if you've got it, maybe that will reassure everyone. It sounds like really good work is being done. Bev?
All I was going to say is through the Adult Safeguarding Board, as a local community organisation, we get regular updates, which gives us links to prevent training to share out to all of our staff, for us to update our prevent strategy within our organisation. So as a community collective, which is probably driven more county-wide and more Essex County Council rather than police driven around that, but it does happen. We get it regularly, which means that everybody else will as well.
The annual one-year report by Shawcross is a public document released by the Home Secretary, so it's a good read.
Thank you, Councillor Willis. Simon?
Chair, am I too early to ask questions about the Colchester Strategic Assessment paper? Is that later?
No, you can ask.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. I thought I'd jump in the gun there. So yeah, looking through the papers, probably the most worrying statistic that I saw was in section 10.3, county lines. County lines, where it talks about.
Can we get a page number, please, Simon?
Yeah,
just
page
for the benefit
number.
of folks at home.
So in the individual report it's page 53, but all of the papers it's page 87. And the worrying statistic is showing that Colchester's showing an increase of over 400% in terms of drugs lines in Colchester, up from 3 to 11. That's, by far and away the biggest increase. So and probably the most worrying thing that I can see in this report. So just asking what's being done about that, please.
County lines.
So I think it's really important to recognise that we've got some really dedicated teams, particularly within Colchester, in order to be able to identify those county lines issues. We are working on a national basis in order to be able to deal with those individuals that are coming out and running those phone lines. It's really important to remember that these are phone lines as opposed to anything else. And so we're targeting those individuals when we are recognising those and being able to bring them into custody, to deal with them in a robust fashion, put them in front of the courts as and when we were able to identify those people, and gathering that intelligence and putting those people before the court as and when we are able to do so as soon as practical.
Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. On that point, it just reminded me, I'm pretty sure I read in the document that it states that with regards to county lines, they are moving out into more rural areas where there is less police presence. So it's good to see that that's been flagged up, but could you maybe expand on how that's going to be dealt with and sort of what sort of preventative measures you're putting in place to protect residents against that?
So I think it's really important to recognise that county lines issues aren't rurally based or urbanly based. They're very much can be in any place or any position. So those things that we're putting in place already and have been doing for a long period of time around gathering intelligence around people, being able to recognise where these are, education messages that go into the place to say, actually, do you know what, this is what we can do in order to intervene and ensure that those messages are protecting those vulnerable people from things like cuckooing and things like that are happening. That's not a rural issue or an urban issue at all whatsoever. That can happen anywhere, and we need to be identified that across the piece, across the whole of Colchester and across the whole of the county as well.
Just probably to add to that as well, from an early intervention perspective, we have our Colchester Against Modern Slavery partnership, for example. We were in Colchester Institute last week talking with the students about vulnerabilities, about exploitation, and of course county lines is one of the subjects that we were talking to those students about. So that is just one of the many activities that we're doing on a weekly, monthly basis.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, I think probably we're getting to a point where we need to invite Graham to deliver his presentation to us to make sure that we're content with the information you provide us, that it relates to the strategic areas of focus. I've just got one cheeky question to the police before I do that, though. I know you must absolutely hate the phrase two-tier policing. I know you must hate it, but I just, in looking at the strategic area of focus where we're talking about antisocial behaviour, I do this regularly. I walk Colchester streets at different hours of the day, and I take different routes, and I try and get a sense of what's going on out there. And my perception is, probably because they get short thrift from me, but when people ask me for money, my perception is that the people sat down whilst consuming alcohol, asking for money, has been dropping off late. That's my perception, personally, though I still see people sat around, and it's not pretty, and it deters my mum from wanting to come to Colchester. She would rather go to Bury St Edmunds, and she tells me that, so I'm just giving you that feedback for my mum's sake, thank you. But on the ASB point, because it's not just about street drinking and that kind of behaviour. Tonight, I'm sure you saw and heard it, there was someone with an amplified device out there, I think, preaching Christian views, right? And I don't think that's right. I don't think we should have walked past have someone with an amplified device like that. Because if it was a slightly warmer evening and you were having a romantic meal outside Bill's, you'd have to hear all of that. And I just think that, if it was a 14-year-old with a massive ghetto blaster listening to some hip hop, probably someone would say something. But because it's a Christian preacher, we ignore it. And I think that potentially does create a sense of two-tiered policing, because it can't be one rule for one and one for another. We have a PSPO. Are we allowed to have amplified chat like that or not? Because I don't think we should. Sorry, but that's a fair question.
So you're absolutely right to bring up the PSPO. Absolutely, we have that in the organisation, and we have got offences within crimes to say about harassment, alarm and distress in those situations. And that's very subjective to the people that are around those in order to be able to ascertain whether or not we think that is or isn't. And it's gathering that evidence around that. And absolutely, you're right. We're not going to say a Christian preacher versus somebody with a ghetto blaster is any different. We just need to understand what's the impact of what that looks like, and is it causing harassment, alarm and distress or otherwise, and gathering that evidence. Just regardless of what it is that they are actually doing for you in those circumstances, it needs to be really subjective and understanding about what the impact of that is. What have they breached the elements of the crime? Have they got the points to prove that we need to be able to address that? And then it is addressing that. And obviously the addressing, depending on the nature of what that is how we address it. Does it initially start with words of advice? Because we absolutely can do that. We have got the discretion to do that as police. Or depending on the impact of what that is, do we actually need to ascertain what other options are available to us in order to deal with that? Is it that we go down a criminal route, or is there some more civil injunctions or anything else that we can do in partnership with the partners around the table in order to effect a change in that perspective? So you're absolutely right, we shouldn't have two-tier policing. It's something that I would very much argue against, but we just need to have a look at those things on an individualistic basis and be really subjective about what all those different things are and the impact of those different elements, and see if they reach the crime threshold, then absolutely we'll do something about it.
Well, that's a great answer. I'm very happy with that, and it does strike me that in this spirit of collaboration and partnership, that it may well be that in the future there might even be dedicated spots where you can have amplified music, dedicated busker spots, like we do on the tube, and it works for everyone because it's not near a residential area or it's near a shop that doesn't want to hear the same two Avril Lavigne songs or whatever it is. Okay, Graham, you've been very patient. Thank you very much. You now have the floor to talk to us about the work that you've been doing and whether or not you think that tonight we should approve these set of recommendations before us.
Sorry, there's a one-page, two-side handout, and it summarises everything that I've got to say this evening, so you don't need to take notes. The way I'm going to play this is a little bit unusual for me. It's a bit of show and tell, actually, so I'm going to be holding up some things. All you have to do is to look at them, maybe note that they're in colour from time to time, but I think it'll all come clear. I hope so, anyway. Can I start by just seeing a show of hands of those people that are members of Neighbourhood Watch? Five. This is the Crime and Disorder Committee, is it? Is that a bit naughty? Sorry. But it would be a good start if you could join. Go and search for Colchester Neighbourhood Watch on Google, and you can join via our website. It's very, very easy, and I promise you don't get an avalanche of things to look at and read. Once a week, an email summarising what has happened in the week before. I'm working with the police in Colchester on a project that kicked off in 2022. I did a calculation and I came up with a figure of £2.5 million of potential revenue to organised crime that can be funded into the supply of drugs, all those other things that those people get involved in. And at one time I did know what it cost for a gram of heroin, and believe you me, £2.5 million buys a hell of a lot of it. So in a sense, if we can clean up on the theft and money-raising activities of those gangs, then we may have an impact on the drug supply and other kinds of crime. So I started a project, and one of the first things I did was with Inspector Stuart Austin. Yeah, he and I visited Jane Gardner down in Chelmsford, and we explained what we were trying to do, that we were trying to change the behaviour of residents in Colchester, to try and make them understand that they can't rely on the police to keep them safe. They've got to work at that themselves. And so just sitting at a bus stop, for example, having your bag 3 feet away on the pavement, you've just got to know that you can run faster than the person that's going to grab it. And it's simple things like that that I'm trying to communicate all of the time. So I think of Jane Gardner as our sponsor. But I also thank 6 members of Neighbourhood Watch in Dedham. And these 6 people wrote to me one day to say they were sick and tired of reading about the sob stories of other people. And would I please take them off the Neighbourhood Watch membership list? So I went back to them and I said, well, I presume that's because not much happens in Colchester. I did a little sum, 0.12% of crime occurs in Dedham. So they were right in a way. But in my reply, I said, I presume you never go into the city centre. Oh, really? And the penny dropped as it was. And what I'm trying to do with all members is to change their behaviour, to make them more streetwise, to make them more cautious, and so on. And I've got a bit of a crime report here. This is week ending the 2nd of March. There were 47 crimes, 15 in Castle Ward, 5 in Newtown, 5 in St Andrews, right down near the bottom of the list, just 1 in Shrub End. But this is what a crime report looks like if you don't get them now, okay? And what I've done is I've just picked out some examples where no matter where you live and you know what kind of property that you have that could be at risk, just reading the MO, the modus operandi, can actually make you safer. So, for example, this is a Jaguar E-Pace. That's a nice car, isn't it? I think, yeah, Jaguar E-Pace, stolen from the property driveway. Victim still has the keys. So those keys have been read through the front door, possibly. They're hanging on a hook just inside the door. And I don't know what an E-Pace costs, but this little Faraday bag to keep your keys in is £1. Yeah, and that could have prevented that crime. So almost that alone just sums up what we're trying to do in Neighbourhood Watch here in Colchester. Let me just find one or two other things here. Oh, I love this one. Suspect unidentified removed victim's purse from her pocket. Victim later saw her purse in suspect's pocket and stole it back. Now, that doesn't happen very often, does it, Michelle? But we did, from that crime, one did actually submit a description of the person that had stolen that. Somebody here, a parcel left outside of the property, stolen as they are, and they lost some UGG slippers, whatever they are. Presumably, are they nice? Yeah. Another one here, this occurred in Marks Tay. Marks Tay is one of the safest areas, and it has a very, very good Neighbourhood Watch coordinator and members. This is a theft of a Ford Fiesta. Now, 2 years ago, Ford Fiestas were the most stolen crime in the whole of Great Britain. The victim still has the keys, once again, so that's 2 in 1 week. There's number plate thefts going on here, a mountain bike from outside of the railway station. It doesn't actually say that it was secured. Could be somebody just parked up their bike, nipped in to get a ticket for tomorrow. My bike's not there when they came out. So that's what I'm targeting with the help of all my coordinators, of which there are about 100. Does it work? Well, in 2023, with just comparing total numbers with 2022, crime was down 30%. Now, it's only the crime that I report and can report, but I think down 30% is a heck of an achievement. But I share that achievement with the police, of course, because maybe they caught some really prolific thieves. I don't know. But the fact is, it was down 30%. And you think, well, you know, could you improve on that in 2024? Well, yes, we did. We got crime down by 49%. And the numbers don't lie. You know, you've just got these tables of figures, and it tells you, you know, what's actually going on. Now, let me just stand up here, because this is the key point. Can you all see that? These are lists of crimes, and I'll tell you which ones they are. The one at the top there is theft of a motor vehicle. The next one down is theft from the person of another. We used to call it pickpocketing. Yeah? This is theft from a motor vehicle, and this is unauthorised taking of the pedal cycle, that was mentioned earlier, and all of this lot here is theft if not classified elsewhere, and it's about the biggest list. There it is. Now, you might be wondering, if it was the right way up, you might be wondering, what are the colours representing? If there's no colour, it means that the victim lived at or near where the crime took place. If it's green, they don't even live in Colchester. Braintree, Clacton-on-Sea, Braintree, Chester, Stowmarket, Sudbury, unknown, and there are others. What do you think the yellow ones are? They're visitors to Colchester city centre. These are all the crimes where the victim was shopping when the crime took place, or having a coffee. When I go into Cafe Nero, I just look around. I see people queuing up with purse in hand, nothing else. The bag's over there in the corner, and it's reserving a seat or a table. So honestly, it's so easy. Look at those yellows. All visitors to the city centre. Michelle, this is my baby, and I want you to help it be born. Okay, we still have the support, but honestly, I'm thinking that maybe the thing we should do is take it to the Chief Constable and get his support. Your predecessor and your whole team are very much on side, and I can't wait to get back together with Brian. Yeah. Brian's years. There is one tiny little thing, and you've got this in your handout. So this is the back page of the handout, and this is 108 crimes. Brian, Officer Spears prepared this for me. 105 of them took place in Colchester City Centre. Sorry, yes, 105. 25 of the victims were from St Andrews, 20 from Shrub End, 15 from Newtown, 13 from St Anne's, 12 from Mile End, 8 from Highwoods, 7 from Stanway, 5 from Beerchurch. And then 3 people were victims of crime in Newtown, and they were from Castleward. So in Colchester, Neighbourhood Watch is really, what we're trying to do is target potential victims. Everybody knows that city centres, town centres, wherever they are, you've got to take care, but people are not taking enough care. And I know Vinny at the end there is pretty interested in the green ones, which are people from all over the country. About a year Christmas ago, somebody was visiting Colchester. They lost their wallet, they lost money, they lost debit card, credit card, and their return rail ticket to Scunthorpe. So you're out there in the high street, you've got no money, no cards, no way of getting home, can't even walk. That's it. Please help, please join Neighbourhood Watch, and please encourage your friends, colleagues, family to do the same. Thank you.
And report crime.
And report crime, that's number 2 on our list of objectives. Yeah. We say 1 is to modify behaviour, secondly, to encourage people to report crime, and the third one is using our website to point to places where victims can get help, advice, and possibly shelter. What do you think is the most accessed page on the Colchester Neighbourhood Watch website? If you know already, don't say. Most accessed page. Theft, possibly? Domestic abuse. That's the most accessed page.
Wow.
Thanks.
Graham, thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for everything that you do.
I should be thanking you.
So, ordinarily, I would suggest we break at this point. However, I am minded that we are probably getting to the end of the meeting. It's been a thoroughly fascinating night, and it's a really positive to see the collaboration and the partnership so strong. So well done, everyone. The decision that we have to take is to agree these 4 proposed key strategic areas of focus for 25-26. There is no hierarchy in these priorities, members of the press, just so we're clear. But I'm minded that we should do that. And if you're minded to do that, we'll do that. So I think, in fact, can we say we've got consensus and it's unanimous? Excellent, that's great. However, there is to be a recommendation, and I want to ask the Deputy Chairman for clarity on this, because I certainly agree that the list of consultees should be extended, because I saw some organisations that I just felt really ought to be there. Is that what you're suggesting, Councillor Willetts, or are you asking something else in terms of the partnership makeup itself? Could I just get some clarity?
if I suggest some words, Chairman, that the partnership considers widening its non-statutory partners and consultees to include parish, town and community councils who have a significant interest in reducing crime and enhancing public safety in the area that they represent.
I think that sounds excellent. I mean, I still think that I'm happy that if Sam looks to me and nods that she agrees that we still need to have a wider focus of some of the specific minority groups that are out there. I mean, I imagine if you're a Russian citizen right now in Colchester, you must be having a tough time. And you know, my point earlier about the Filipino community not being consulted, but we go to the Chinese, where I think there's more Filipinos here. So if you can kind of give me the nod that you're going to extend the list in that dimension and take on board the very clear, succinct words here from Dennis, if panel are minded. Dennis, you've made a proposal. I will second that. Are we all happy? Do I see dissent? No, I don't. Okay. Then we'll take your recommendation. Thank you, Dennis. Excellent. And at that point, I think we're there, aren't we? Okay. Mr. Clark, what else do we need to do?
That's it.
Gosh, remarkable. Okay, well, that was probably one of the shorter ones. I didn't expect that, but that's testament perhaps to all the good work that's going on. Does anyone else wish to say anything? Are you happy that I wrap the meeting? Leader, you happy? Great. Okay, I conclude the meeting. When will we see each other again, Mr. Clark?
I think it's going to be February 2026.
Cool. It's in the diary. Thank you very much. Safe journey home, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.